So I have just, as I say, just submitted a PhD thesis about the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum's adaptation to the digital museum. So when I say digital museum, that's quite a broad term. It's kind of the public-facing elements. So within my research, I primarily focus on the site itself, the fact that there isn't actually a lot of technology, it's very minimal on site. Also looked at the museum's official website, particularly the 360-degree panoramic virtual tour that they have, and also dedicated a chapter to social media. Again, primarily Twitter, because this is where the museum has the largest amount of correspondence with its visitors and also the public at large, as it were. And from doing my research then, I've found there are particular tensions, and there's the overall kind of tension is this idea of a 20th century museum, or what is now a museum, trying to incorporate and integrate digital modern elements into their museological practices. So in terms of the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum, I found that there are three particular elements where this comes through. So the first one is authority. If we talk about authority in terms of museums, then obviously this relates to information, to being a knowledge base, to being a place of education. In Holocaust museums, particularly commemoration as well, and also sometimes participation. So for the Auschwitz Museum, there is a tension in trying to invite visitors and invite the public to take part in discussion, particularly on social media, whilst also retaining this very strong sense of authority and being the sort of premier, if you like, source of how to represent Auschwitz, particularly in the digital realm. So for example, they had a discussion last November when a visitor had put a picture of a little rubber duck mascot outside the gates of Auschwitz-Birkenau, and that was opened up as a discussion to Twitter users. You know, is this a kind of appropriate form of representation? You know, should we accept it or should we ignore it, and then encourage a debate? And then at other times there's quite a strong criticism of some visitors' behaviour or the pictures they take, the way that some journalists write about the museum, and so on and so on. So there's this kind of tension between, as I say, trying to have the authority on Holocaust or Auschwitz representation and trying to open that up to the public and visitors as well. The second element is about authenticity. So I'm sure you've all heard the Auschwitz Museum speak about being the authentic site. And I wanted to break that down a bit because that's quite a vague, ambiguous term, authenticity. So I essentially split it into two categories, which we do see in the research. The first one being curatorial authenticity, so kind of historical, objective, scientific authenticity, relating to things like objects and buildings that are original, that were there at the time of the camp's operation. And we find that with visitors, they actually experience authenticity differently. They are more concerned with how it feels as an authentic experience. So I call that experiential authenticity. And so again, there's a tension between the museum representing its ideas of authenticity, of curatorial authenticity, and then how to integrate that with the experiential authenticity of visitors, what feels authentic for them. And so this is explored primarily through the on-site experience, the fact that there is very, very minimal technology on site, and what is there is mainly in the national exhibitions, which are curated by external organisations. And finally, just the sort of the briefer one is audience, the tension between appealing to everyone, all age groups, demographics from all over the world, with whatever knowledge they're coming with, but also targeting specific groups, primarily on social media, as I say, journalists, visitors, sometimes companies like Amazon and Redbubble and so on. So the study that I've done is it's not designed as a criticism of the museum. They do fantastic work. You know, you can see from social media the impact that their work has on people and on the public, but it opens up questions of the idea of ethical and appropriate representations of Auschwitz and the Holocaust online, and also kind of the question that about ownership. You know, if there is ownership, who gets to decide? Is it museums? Is it academics? It's a question that I think has been hinted at in the media, for example, when people take selfies at the museum and are criticised, but there's not an ethical, wider discussion around that.